Hello! Thank you for joining Craig's Gun Channel this week. This week we're going to go over the Ruger LC9s. The LC9 design originated with the Ruger LCP, released in 2008. The LCP utilized the .380 ACP cartridge and was designed and produced to serve the new concealed carry market that was sweeping the nation. While there were similar firearms already in existence, the Ruger proved to be well-built, economical, and backed by a major name in the firearms industry. Over the next few years, other manufacturers joined the move to produce similar carry weapons, and as many people felt that the .380 was just not quite powerful enough, the move to small, concealable firearms in larger calibers began. In 2011, Ruger introduced the LC9, essentially a scaled-up version of the LCP, except it used 9mm. The LC9 differed in that the sights were adjustable and could be changed for alternate options such as fiber optic or tritium night sights. Also, a manual side-mounted safety was offered, which the LCP lacked. Like the LCP, the LC9 was hammer-fired, which had a long, heavy trigger pull. Many of its competitors on the market were striker-fired, which allowed for a much shorter and lighter trigger. It turns out that consumers preferred that type of a trigger on the firearm, so Ruger redesigned the LC9 in 2014 to be striker-fired and designated the new firearm as the LC9s. Two models are available. The standard model features a magazine disconnect and a side-mounted safety. A magazine disconnect prevents the gun from being able to be fired when the magazine is removed, and while the idea is meant to make the firearm safer, many consider the magazine disconnect to be a detriment in a self-defense firearm. Likewise, many feel that a self-defense firearm does not need a safety, as it's something else that may be a hindrance if the firearm is needed in a fast-moving situation. Therefore, a Pro version is available, which eliminates both of those options. Both models employ a trigger safety designed to help prevent the firearm from inadvertently firing should something catch on the trigger. And in 2018, in an effort to make a more affordable version, the EC9S model was introduced. This version features everything that the standard model LC9S does, except the sights are integral to the slide and cannot be adjusted or changed. This design is less costly to produce and therefore can be offered at a much more economical price point, hence the name the EC9S. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the LC9S, at its controls, features, and the teardown. Of course, before working on any firearm, you first need to safety check it to make sure that it is free and clear of any ammunition. So nothing in the magazine. And as we can see, it's clear on the inside. So now we can go ahead and go over the controls of the Ruger LC9s. First, we have the magazine release. Simply pressing in on that releases the magazine. Of course, we have the trigger. The Ruger LC9s is a striker-fired firearm, which means the trigger is a single-action only trigger. It does have a trigger safety. It's a center lever that basically, the way that functions is if something would happen to catch on the trigger, it won't be able to actually fully engage it unless the center portion was also engaged. The theory being that it would actually take a purposeful trigger pull by someone firing the weapon for it to go off. So if it happened to catch on something, it wouldn't go off. But when you actually depress the entire trigger, then it can fire. Now, the reason I put the magazine in it to show you that, the Ruger LC9 does have a magazine disconnect feature, so the trigger itself is inoperable unless the magazine is in the firearm. So, other controls, we have the slide release right here, and the way that functions, when the last round is fired from the magazine, there's a little shelf right there, and that shelf engages the lever on the inside. So as the slide goes back, that will push the lever up, and that lever is attached with a little tab here which engages into a recess in the slide, and that's what locks it back. Of course, to release the slide, you would just pull down on that lever. Now, keep in mind, that's a really, really small lever, and you're working against the tension of the spring for the slide as well as the tension of the magazine spring. So it is very difficult to pull down on an empty magazine. So I'll go ahead and take the magazine out. It's much easier with an empty magazine. Or if this were a full magazine where you weren't working against that spring pressure, it would also be much easier. So, other controls on the firearm. This particular model does have a safety. The Ruger LC9 comes in a couple different models, some with safeties, some without. This particular one, of course, has the safety. The red dot there means it is ready to fire. To put it on safe, you would simply lift up, and that would show then a little white dot. That will render the striker assembly safe. It locks the striker so that it cannot operate. It also engages a notch on the slide, so the slide itself is locked and cannot be manipulated when the safety is on. So those are the main controls of the firearm. This little lever here is actually what's used for the takedown of the pistol. And that's actually, it's a little gate that keeps the retaining pin or the locking pin in place that holds the slide on. So let's go ahead and disassemble the firearm for maintenance. So first, put the magazine in, because as part of the takedown procedure, you do have to pull the trigger. These come with an orange magazine in the box. A lot of people might not realize what that's for. If you read your manual, of course, it would tell you. However, some people, if you're buying a firearm used especially, you might not get that safety magazine. So, of course, whenever you're doing this, you want to make sure that any magazine that you use is, in fact, also empty, just for safety's sake. So, what you want to do, might as well go ahead, we'll cock it, because we want to open this area up here, and you have to pull back on the slide slightly, and that spring on the striker is just additional resistance, and so when you pull it back, you'd be working against that spring as well. So first, to open that gate, you just push down on it, and it is fairly difficult to push down. So once it's pushed down, that exposes the pin. You can see it there. On the other side, there's a little half moon shape, and that's what you would use to basically push something through once you align the half moon shape on this side with the pin. So you just basically pull the slide back slightly, and then you can push that out. And once that's out, remove the pin. Now at this point is where you would need to pull the trigger to release that sear and the striker assembly, remove the magazine, and now the slide will come off the frame. So for maintenance of the frame itself, you basically want to clean up everything on the inside, remove any dirt or corrosion or just any gunk that's in there. That's as far as you want to actually take this assembly apart. Any further work should be done by someone who's qualified to do that work. This little bar right here, that's the ejector. Here, so you can see it a little bit better. This is the sear that engages and disengages the striker on the firearm. I'll show you how that works. Put the magazine in it so the trigger will work. And when you pull the trigger, if you notice that little sear there goes down. And that's pretty much as far as you want to go with the frame itself. So then we'll take a look at the slide and barrel. The recoil spring is right here. It is a captive spring. There's a little plunger right here which engages into a little saddle that's on the barrel. So to disengage this, to remove it, you would just push forward on that little plunger just very slightly while lifting up. So basically you just push and lift, and then that can be removed as a unit. And then that leaves the barrel. So the barrel You basically just lift up on it a little bit, push it forward, and then it lifts out. The slide itself, you'd want to clean the grooves in here, the slots in the slide that engage with the rails in the frame. This is your striker right here, that little metal tab, and that is what engages on that sear there, and basically it pulls it back just slightly, and when you pull that sear down, that lets it fly forward, and that's what fires the weapon. So as far as service, you just want to clean everything out here, then give it a light coating of oil. This is as far as this should be disassembled. Your ejector, or actually the extractor, is right here, that little hook. It's an external extractor, so you can see it on the outside of the frame, or outside of the slide rather. The barrel, you would want to clean both the inside, scrub it out with a brush, and on the outside, clean it up in a slight coating of oil. And then for reassembly, you'll put the barrel in. You'll put the recoil spring into its hole in the top. You'll push the plunger in slightly and then down to re-engage it into that little saddle. So it's like that. The rails you'll align with the slots. And then you'll pull it back to align that hole for the pin. Slide the pin in. Once the pin's all the way in, you lift up on the gate to hold the pin in place, and it's reassembled. You'll want to function test it to make sure everything works. And that's all there is. I hope this information has been of assistance to you. The Ruger LC9s is a good economical 9mm carry alternative and is one that I think you should consider. Like all firearms that you might want to use for concealed carry, you should probably handle and try a couple different ones to find the one that best fits you, your needs, and your ability to be able to shoot it. Everyone's a little bit different, so picking out a firearm that fits you is an individual choice and something that only you can make the decision for. The LC9s serves my needs, and it is in fact the firearm that I usually carry most often. So I hope this information's been of assistance, and as always, we'll see you next week, and be safe.